Something is happening to men in relationships that nobody wants to acknowledge. You're watching confident, capable men enter relationships as one person and emerge 18 months later as someone you barely recognize. Not because they changed, but because they were systematically dismantled, piece by piece, pillar by pillar, until the foundation of who they were has been completely eroded. This isn't about toxic relationships or abusive partners. This is about a pattern so subtle, so incremental, that most men don't even realize it's happening until they're looking in the mirror one day, wondering where the hell they went. And the worst part? She probably doesn't even know she's doing it. These aren't conscious attacks. They're instinctive behaviors, hardwired tactics that some women deploy without ever questioning why. I'm going to show you the 5-step process through which male confidence is systematically destroyed. Not to create resentment, but to create awareness. Because once you see the pattern, it loses its power over you. Once you recognize the machinery, you can't be crushed by it. The first strike happens in the most vulnerable territory of masculine identity, sexual performance. This isn't about critique or feedback. This is surgical targeting of the deepest layer of male ego. Because a man's sexual confidence is connected to something primal, something that exists beneath conscious thought. It's tied to his sense of dominance, his ability to satisfy, his fundamental value as a man. When she says something during or immediately after intimacy that questions his performance, she's not just making an observation. She's detonating a psychological bomb. "My ex used to last longer," said casually, like she's commenting on the weather. Or worse, the sigh of disappointment, the checking of her phone mid-act, the "are you done already?" delivered with just enough confusion that he can't tell if she's genuinely asking or subtly mocking. Here's what happens in his brain. Evolution wired men to equate sexual prowess with survival value. In our ancestral environment, the ability to satisfy a woman meant genetic success. That programming is still running. When she attacks his performance, even subtly, she's not just hurting his feelings. She's activating a primal fear that he's inadequate at the most fundamental level. And here's the trap within the trap. Once that seed of doubt is planted, it becomes self-fulfilling. He starts overthinking during intimacy. Am I taking too long? Is she bored? Does she wish I was someone else? And that mental interference destroys natural performance, which gives her more ammunition, which creates more anxiety. It's a death spiral of sexual confidence that begins with a single well-placed comment. You know what's fascinating? She might do this immediately after he accomplishes something significant at work. He closes a major deal, comes home feeling like a king, and that night she makes a comment about his stamina. It's not coincidence, it's unconscious leveling. When his confidence in one area rises too high, she brings him down in another, maintaining the power balance. The second assault targets his role as provider and leader. This one is insidious because it masquerades as innocent conversation. She mentions that her friend's husband just bought them a new car. Nothing explicitly critical, just a statement of fact. But the subtext is deafening. He's doing better than you. Why aren't you? Social comparison becomes her weapon of choice. The neighbor who got promoted. The cousin who took his wife to Europe. Her father who always gave her mother everything she wanted, implying that's what real men do. Each comparison is a small cut, but 1,000 small cuts can kill just as effectively as one deep wound. Men measure their value through achievement and provision. This isn't cultural programming. This is biological reality. When she constantly positions other men as superior in these domains, she's activating his deepest insecurity, that he's not alpha enough, that she's settled, that she could do better and she knows it. I remember this guy telling me about bringing home news of a promotion. Significant raise, new title, more responsibility. His girlfriend's immediate response, "That's great, Mark just made partner at his firm. Not congratulations, not celebration, just immediate comparison to someone doing better. He told me something died inside him that day. Not the promotion, his desire to share victories with her. What makes this particularly destructive is the timing. She'll often deploy these comparisons right after his accomplishments, reframing success as inadequacy. He achieves something, feels proud, shares it with her, and she immediately points to someone who achieved more. Over time, his brain starts associating accomplishment with disappointment. Why bother achieving anything if it's never enough? The psychological impact compounds. He stops sharing victories. He stops trying for certain goals because he knows they won't impress her. He internalizes the message that no matter what he does, he'll always be less than someone else in her eyes. His ambition doesn't die because he's lazy. It dies because she systematically taught him that effort yields only inadequacy. The third phase is silent but absolutely lethal. Isolation. She doesn't tell him to stop seeing his friends. That would be too obvious. Instead, she makes every social engagement emotionally expensive. He has plans with his boys on Saturday. Suddenly, she's having a crisis that needs him home. His family wants to visit. She creates subtle tension that makes the visit uncomfortable for everyone. The tactics are surgical. She'll be cold all week leading up to his guys' night, then warm and affectionate the moment he cancels. Classical conditioning at its finest. She'll plant seeds of doubt about his friends' intentions. I don't know, I just get weird vibes from Jake. Does he really have your best interests at heart? She'll cry when he chooses time with others over her, framing his normal social needs as abandonment. Here's why this matters. Male friendships are more than social connection. They're reality checks. When you're isolated from other men, you lose perspective. You lose the ability to compare your experience to others. You lose the mirror that reflects back who you actually are versus who she says you are. Brotherhood provides men with frame reinforcement. Your boys tell you when you're being unreasonable, but they also tell you when she's being unreasonable. They validate your perceptions. They confirm your reality. When that network is severed, she becomes your only source of feedback about yourself. And when someone controls your only source of feedback, they control your entire reality. I've seen this pattern play out dozens of times. Man enters relationship with strong social network. 6 months later, he's barely talking to his best friends. A year later, he's making excuses for why he can't attend his own brother's birthday. 18 months later, he realizes he has no one to talk to except her. And that's exactly where she needs him to be. Dependent, isolated, vulnerable. The fourth weapon is perhaps the most psychologically devastating: gaslighting, making him question his own perception, his own memory, his own sanity. She says something cruel one day. When he brings it up the next week, she looks at him like he's crazy. I never said that. You're imagining things. When he shows her text evidence, she reframes it. You're taking it out of context. You're being paranoid. This isn't just lying. This is reality warfare. When someone consistently denies your lived experience, your brain starts to fracture. You have two competing realities: what you remember happening and what she insists happened. And here's the sick psychology. Most people assume others are telling the truth more often than lying. So when there's a conflict between your memory and her denial, your brain tends to give her the benefit of the doubt. Over time, he stops trusting his own perceptions. Did that conversation actually happen the way I remember? Am I being too sensitive? Am I the problem? She's not just changing the narrative. She's teaching him to doubt his ability to perceive reality accurately. And a man who doesn't trust his own perceptions is completely controllable. The gaslighting often combines with intermittent reinforcement, days of warmth and connection, then sudden coldness with no explanation. When he asks what's wrong, she says nothing's wrong, implying he's imagining problems, then back to warmth. This inconsistency is deliberately destabilizing. He can't predict her behavior, so he can't develop strategies to manage it. He's always off balance, always unsure, always seeking her validation to tell him what's real. I knew someone whose girlfriend would pick fights, say terrible things, then the next day act like nothing happened. When he brought up what she said, she'd claim she was joking, or he misheard, or he's too sensitive. After 6 months of this, he legitimately started wondering if he had memory problems. He went to a doctor, thinking something was neurologically wrong with him. There wasn't. His brain was fine. His reality was being systematically distorted. The fifth and final step activates something primal, jealousy-based mate guarding. She mentions other men just frequently enough to keep him in territorial mode. Her coworker is so funny. Her ex texted asking how she's doing. Some guy at the gym keeps trying to talk to her. Each mention is calibrated to activate his mate-guarding instincts without crossing into obvious manipulation. Here's the psychological mechanism. Male jealousy triggers a defensive posture that consumes enormous mental and emotional energy. When a man is worried about competition, about losing her to another male, his entire cognitive framework shifts from proactive mission to reactive defense. Instead of focusing on his goals, his growth, his purpose, he's focused on monitoring threats to the relationship. A man in mate-guarding mode is not a man in leadership mode. He's not building. He's not creating. He's not advancing. He's circling the wagons, watching for predators, constantly checking if she's still his. And a man stuck in that reactive state loses the very qualities that create attraction: direction, purpose, outcome independence. She knows this, not consciously, but instinctively. When she mentions other men, she's testing whether she still has that power over him. When he reacts with jealousy, it confirms she's still valuable enough to defend. And here's the twisted reward mechanism. She often gives him affection and attention immediately after he displays jealousy. You're so cute when you're jealous. This programs him to seek jealous episodes as pathways to her validation. What makes all 5 steps so devastating is they don't happen in isolation. They compound. Sexual insecurity makes him more vulnerable to provider comparisons. Provider inadequacy makes isolation easier to justify. Isolation makes gaslighting more effective. Gaslighting makes jealousy manipulation more potent. It's not 5 separate attacks. It's a systematic dismantling of every pillar of male confidence. You want to know something that will blow your mind? A man can go through all 5 steps and still think he's the problem. He'll look at his anxiety, his insecurity, his constant need for her approval and think, "I'm weak. I'm not man enough. I need to try harder." He never realizes that his weakness isn't inherent. It's manufactured. He's been systematically broken down through calculated psychological pressure. The cultural element makes this worse. Men are told they're toxic for having boundaries, controlling for having standards, insecure for having needs. So when these tactics are deployed against them, they have no framework to understand what's happening. They just know they feel terrible, and they assume it's their fault, because everyone has told them that male feelings are either invalid or signs of weakness. Here's what nobody wants to admit. A confident man is harder to control than an insecure man. A man who trusts his perceptions is harder to manipulate than one who doubts himself. A man with strong male friendships is harder to isolate than one who's socially dependent on her. A man sexually confident is harder to leverage than one constantly worried about performance. These 5 steps don't create better relationships. They create controllable men. And the most brutal irony of all, the more successful these tactics are, the less attracted she becomes to him. Because the very confidence she's destroying is the confidence that attracted her in the first place. She wants a strong man, so she systematically destroys his strength, then wonders why she's no longer attracted to him. It's psychological self-sabotage at civilizational scale. The men reading this right now are having one of two reactions. Either complete recognition, that sick feeling in your stomach because you've lived every single step, or complete denial, the instinct to close this and tell yourself it doesn't apply to you. This is just bitter man talk. But if you're in the second category, ask yourself, why the defensive reaction? Why the need to deny before examining? This isn't about hating women. This is about recognizing patterns that destroy men. These tactics work because they exploit real vulnerabilities in male psychology. They target the things men actually care about: performance, provision, perception, protection. They're effective precisely because they strike at authentic masculine needs rather than surface concerns. The solution isn't anger or resentment. The solution is unshakable frame built on internal validation rather than external approval. When your confidence comes from your own standards rather than her reactions, these tactics lose power. When your reality is grounded in your own perceptions rather than her narrative, gaslighting fails. When your social network is maintained regardless of her approval, isolation becomes impossible. But most men won't get there because they're too invested in the idea that love should be easy, that the right woman won't test them, that genuine connection means never having to defend your reality. They're operating from the romantic comedy playbook in a world that runs on evolutionary psychology and power dynamics. Your confidence isn't fragile because you're weak. It's fragile because it was built on sand. Her approval, her validation, her attraction. Real confidence is built on rock. Your values, your standards, your mission. When you stop seeking permission to be yourself, these 5 steps become impossible to execute. I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 steps have you experienced? At what point did you realize your confidence was being systematically dismantled? Share your stories in the comments. Recognition is the first step to immunity. Once you see the pattern, you can't be broken by it.